Chapter 6. The Past Resurfaces. Kiara had always believed that once she left Adam behind, her past would no longer have power over her. She had rebuilt herself from the ashes of that betrayal. She had stepped into a new life, one where she wasn't just someone's discarded wife, but a woman of strength, intelligence, and quiet vengeance. And yet, the past had a way of clawing its way back into the present, refusing to be forgotten. And tonight, it would prove it wasn't done with her yet. The evening had been peaceful until the letter arrived. James was in his study, buried in work, when Kiara's phone buzzed with an unexpected delivery. A plain white envelope slipped under their door. There was no name, no return address, just a single line written on the front: "Meet me at the Windsor Hotel, 10 p.m. Come alone if you want the truth." Kiara's pulse quickened. The truth? About what? She debated telling James, but something in her gut told her she needed to do this on her own. So, she made her choice. At 9:55 p.m., she stepped out of the car and into the dimly lit hotel lobby, her heart hammering against her ribs. She didn't know what to expect. She certainly hadn't expected to see him. Adam. Kiara stopped in her tracks, her breath catching. He sat at a corner table in the hotel bar, nursing a glass of whiskey. His suit was slightly rumpled, his usually sharp expression weighed down by something heavy. Regret. She hesitated only for a second before straightening her shoulders and walking toward him. "This was a bold move," she said as she took the seat across from him. "A dramatic meeting at a hotel? Are you trying to rekindle something, Adam?" He huffed a bitter laugh. "I doubt there's anything left to rekindle." She smirked. "Then why am I here?" Adam studied her for a long moment before exhaling. There are things you don't know, Kiara." She tilted her head. "Is that so?" "Because lately, I've been learning quite a bit. Like how Lauren didn't just conveniently come back into your life. She manipulated you into leaving me." His jaw clenched. "I didn't come here to talk about Lauren." "Then what do you want?" she asked, her voice even but cold. Adam leaned forward, his expression suddenly serious. "You need to be careful, Kiara. James isn't who you think he is." A slow chill crept down her spine. She laughed lightly, masking the unease growing in her stomach. "Is that why you called me here? To warn me about my own husband?" "I'm serious," Adam said, his tone dark. "You think James married you out of kindness? Out of revenge against me?" He shook his head. "You don't see it, do you?" Kiara narrowed her eyes. "See what?" Adam's voice dropped lower. "James has been watching you for years." Her blood ran cold. She forced herself to stay composed. "That's ridiculous." Adam let out a humorless chuckle. "Is it? Think about it, Kiara. He swooped in the moment I left. He didn't just offer you protection. He offered you his name. He made you his wife, gave you access to a world that made you stronger than me. Why?" Kiara's fingers curled into fists under the table. "I don't need to justify my marriage to you." Adam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm telling you this because He hesitated, then exhaled. "Because I should have told you a long time ago." Something in his expression shifted then, and for the first time in years, Kiara saw something real in his eyes. Guilt. Not the shallow regret of a man who lost something, but the weight of a man who had known a secret for far too long. Kiara left the hotel with her mind spinning. Adam was playing a game. He had to be. Yet, something about his words unsettled her. She thought back to the first time she met James, the way he had always been there. The way his presence in her life had felt like an inevitability. Had it all been a coincidence, or had James always been waiting? When she returned home, she found him standing in his study, looking over some documents. "Where did you go?" James asked without turning around. Kiara hesitated before stepping inside. "I had a meeting." James finally looked at her, his sharp gaze assessing. With who? She met his stare, searching for something, a tell, a sign, a crack in his perfect mask. Adam. The name dropped like a stone between them. James's expression remained unreadable. "I see." She stepped closer. "He told me something interesting." James didn't respond. "He said you've been watching me for years." Silence. Then, James let out a slow breath and leaned back against the desk, regarding her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "And do you believe him?" he asked. Kiara held his gaze, her heart pounding. "I don't know. Should I?" A slow, knowing smirk crossed James's lips. "I think, Kiara," he murmured, "you're finally asking the right questions." Chapter 7. The Ultimate Betrayal and the Twist. A Fractured Trust. Kiara had always prided herself on being a woman who learned from her mistakes. She had learned the pain of blind trust with Adam. She had learned resilience through betrayal. She had thought she was stronger now, sharper, more careful, immune to deception. But James had just shattered that illusion with one smirk. His words still echoed in her mind. "You're finally asking the right questions." She had expected denial, outrage, maybe even anger that she would dare to question him. Instead, he had smirked, like he had known this moment would come, like he had been waiting for it. That night, sleep was impossible. Kiara lay beside James, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, her mind racing. Had he always been orchestrating this? Every kind gesture, every word of support, every step he had taken to pull her out of the wreckage of her marriage? Was it all manipulation? Had she simply traded one cage for another? As dawn neared, she made a decision. She'd spent too long being played. It was time to start playing the game herself. James had an office in their estate that he never let anyone enter, even Kiara. Tonight, that was going to change. With James gone for a business meeting, she slipped inside, her heart hammering. The office was meticulous, organized too perfectly, like it was meant to discourage prying eyes. But Kiara wasn't the same woman she had been before. She searched, and then she found it. A locked drawer. Her fingers trembled as she picked up a letter opener from the desk and forced it open. Inside, she found a file. Her name was on the cover, and when she opened it, her entire world fell apart. There were photos of her from years ago, not just recent ones, not just from their time together. Some were from before she had even met Adam. A picture of her leaving college, a candid shot of her working late at her old job, an image of her standing at a cafe, lost in thought. James had been watching her long before Adam ever left her. A wave of nausea hit her. She flipped through the pages, her hands trembling. There were documents, records of her past, financial details, her old apartment lease, her marriage certificate with Adam, and then a letter from Adam. Kiara's breath hitched as she read the words. "I know what you want from her, but she's not yours to claim." The paper shook in her grip. James had been involved in her life long before their marriage. He had known Adam. He had wanted her. And somehow Adam had known. The sound of a door closing downstairs made Kiara's blood run cold. James was home. She barely had time to shove the documents back before she heard his footsteps approaching. The door creaked open. James stood there, his eyes dark and knowing. "You've been busy," he said calmly, his gaze flickering to the half-closed drawer. Kiara forced herself to stay composed. "You've been lying to me." James sighed, stepping further into the room. "I never lied, Kiara." She let out a sharp laugh. "You've been watching me for years. You knew Adam before I even met you. You've—" Her voice caught. "You orchestrated everything, didn't you?" James remained silent, and that was her answer. A wave of betrayal crashed over her, more violent than anything Adam had ever inflicted. Because James had known everything, her pain, her humiliation, her weakness, and he had stepped in not as her savior, but as her puppeteer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Did you make Adam leave me?" James's gaze was unreadable. "Adam made his own choices. But you influenced them, she accused." He took a step forward. "I did what was necessary." Kiara backed away. "Necessary for what? For you to have me?" His jaw clenched. "You were never meant to be with Adam. He was a fool who didn't deserve you." Her chest ached with the weight of his words. "You don't get to decide that," she whispered. James exhaled slowly. Maybe not. He studied her, his expression unreadable. "But would you have ever seen the truth if I hadn't stepped in?" Kiara swallowed the lump in her throat. The worst part, she didn't know. Would she have stayed with Adam, miserable and unloved, if James hadn't intervened? Would she have remained blind to her own strength? She hated that there was a small part of her that knew the answer. James stepped closer, his voice quieter now. "I never wanted to hurt you, Kiara. Everything I did was to protect you." She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "You don't protect someone by controlling them." His expression softened just slightly. "I love you." Her breath hitched. Because despite everything, she believed him. But love built on deception was not love at all. She turned away, trying to steady herself. "I need time." James watched her, something unreadable flashing in his gaze. He didn't try to stop her as she walked out of the office, but as she stepped away, she knew one thing for certain. The game between them had changed, and she wasn't going to be a pawn anymore. Chapter 8, The True Love Story. Kiara had never been more certain of anything in her life. She could not stay in this house. Not with James, not after learning that their entire love story had been crafted, manipulated, shaped by his hands long before she even knew he existed. She had let herself believe their connection was something born from fate, two souls coming together after the destruction Adam had left behind. But now she knew the truth. James had always been there, watching, waiting, pulling strings from the shadows, and she couldn't breathe knowing that. That night, she packed a bag. James stood by the doorway, silently watching. "You think leaving will change anything?" His voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of something darker. She kept her back to him, stuffing the last of her clothes into the suitcase. "It will change everything." He took a slow step forward. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere you can't control," she bit out, zipping up the bag. James let out a low chuckle, but it was hollow. "You think I've been controlling you?" She whirled around, eyes blazing. "You built a life around me before I even knew who you were, James. You knew Adam. You knew everything about me, and you never once told me the truth. That isn't love, it's obsession." His jaw clenched. "You're wrong." "Am I?" Her voice wavered slightly, but she steadied herself. "Would you have ever told me the truth if I hadn't found those files?" James didn't answer, and that silence was all she needed. Her heart broke again, but this time, it didn't destroy her. This time, she knew who she was without him. She grabbed her suitcase and walked past him. But just as she reached the doorway, his voice stopped her. "Kiara," he said, softer now. She froze. His voice was raw when he spoke again. "I never meant to hurt you." Her eyes burned, but she refused to turn around. "And yet, you did." She walked out, and for the first time since her world fell apart, she wasn't walking away from something. She was walking toward herself. Kiara moved into a quiet apartment on the other side of the city. For weeks, she let herself grieve, not just for the betrayal, but for the love she had once believed in. James didn't try to contact her. Not directly, but there were signs that he was still watching. A security detail she hadn't hired lurking near her apartment, a sudden influx of opportunities for work, ones she knew were being arranged by him, a single bouquet of white roses left outside her door with no note. She ignored them all. She focused on herself. For the first time, she wasn't someone's wife. Not Adam's. Not James's. She was just Kiara, and she was learning to love that. One evening, 3 months later, there was a knock at her door. She knew who it was before she even opened it. James stood there, looking nothing like the confident man she had once known. His suit was slightly wrinkled, the dark circles under his eyes stark against his sharp features. He looked haunted, but Kiara had built her walls too high now. "What do you want, James?" she asked, arms crossed. He was silent for a long moment before he finally spoke. "You were right," he admitted. "I controlled too much. I should have told you the truth." Her fingers tightened around the doorframe. "And yet you didn't," he exhaled sharply, "because I was afraid." That surprised her. "Afraid?" James ran a hand through his hair, looking away. "I knew if you ever found out the truth, you would never look at me the same way again. And I was right." A lump formed in her throat. "You manipulated my entire life." His expression twisted. "I loved you before I even knew what love was." She inhaled sharply. "I watched you because I couldn't stop," he admitted, "because something about you made me want to be better, to be a man worthy of you. But I failed, Kiara." His voice turned hoarse. "I ruined the one thing I never wanted to lose." Her heart ached, because despite it all, James had never lied about loving her. She just didn't know if love was enough anymore. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," she whispered. James swallowed hard. "I know." He hesitated, then took a step back. "I won't force you to forgive me. I won't chase you anymore." His voice was steady, but his eyes were filled with loss. "But I need you to know I would do anything to go back and fix this. Anything." Kiara stared at him, torn between anger and something far more dangerous. Because deep down she still loved him. She had never stopped, but sometimes love wasn't enough. She exhaled slowly. "James," he shook his head, a sad smile touching his lips. "You don't have to say anything." And then he walked away. For the first time, James let her go. Days passed, then weeks. Kiara felt something missing, a weight in her chest that didn't lift even as she found peace in her independence. She told herself it was just the remnants of old love. But she knew better. James had broken her trust, but she had seen him break too. She had seen the man beneath the control, the man who had loved her in the only way he knew how. And maybe, just maybe, she wanted to see if he could learn to love her the right way. So one evening, she found herself standing outside his penthouse. She knocked. James opened the door, his expression unreadable, until he saw her face. He didn't speak, didn't dare to hope. Kiara inhaled deeply, her voice steady. "I don't forgive you," she said. James nodded, his face carefully blank. "I wouldn't expect you to, but I want to see if you can earn it." For the first time in months, his mask shattered. And for the first time, Kiara felt in control of their love story, not as his pawn, not as his weakness, but as his equal. And that was the true love story. Kiara stood on the balcony of their shared penthouse, the city lights flickering beneath her like a sea of stars. 1 year. 1 year since she walked back into James's life and told him he had to earn her trust. 1 year of slow, careful steps towards something real. James had changed. Not overnight, not easily, but with effort. Gone was the man who had believed control and power were the only ways to keep love. In his place was a man who understood that love wasn't something to be orchestrated, it was something to be given freely. The journey hadn't been perfect. There were fights, there were doubts, there were nights Kiara almost walked away again. But each time, James chose her the right way. No manipulation, no control, just love. And slowly, she chose him back. A pair of strong arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her back against a solid chest. "James." He pressed a soft kiss to her temple, his voice lower now, gentler. "You're thinking again." Kiara smiled, leaning into him. "I do that sometimes." He let out a quiet chuckle, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What about?" She turned in his arms, meeting the dark eyes that had once terrified her with their intensity. Now, she saw devotion in them. Real, unfiltered, uncontrolled devotion. "I was thinking about how different you are," she admitted. James exhaled softly, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her back. "You changed me." Kiara shook her head. "No, you changed yourself. I just gave you a reason to." His eyes darkened with emotion. "You were always my reason." Once, those words would have felt like chains. Now, they felt like freedom. She smiled, reaching up to brush a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "Then don't lose me again." His grip tightened around her. "Never." And for the first time in their twisted, complicated love story, Kiara believed him. Because this time, he wasn't holding on to control. He was simply holding her. And that was enough. The end. Kiara's journey has been full of heartbreak, betrayal, and unexpected twists, but her story isn't over yet. The road to healing love is never easy, and there's always more to discover. If you've enjoyed this emotional roller coaster, make sure to subscribe for the latest updates, future stories, and more captivating twists. There's always more to explore, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Stay tuned. New stories await.